Hi everyone, this is Lauren coming at you from the break zone with a deck tech video going over the Ohio Cup winner. But first of all, I'd like to remind you that we're still running the raffle for these spiffy lightning sleeves. Square-Enix product, 60 pieces, enough for a deck and then some. So, congratulations to Korey Fay for winning it all at the first official Square-Enix event after the release of Opus 5. So Opus 5 came out on Friday, and he was able to playtest throughout the week, gather all the cards, and actually win it all with his deck named Miner Wishing He Was Steiner. Alright, so first card we'll go over is Ingus, as you can see right there. He's on curve, 3 drop 7k, and he boosts the Job Warrior of Light and Earth Forwards by plus 1000, which is actually quite relevant in this deck, and his job title is Warrior of Light. He also has the ability to dole a total of a combination of 3 active Earth Forwards or Earth Backups to choose one forward and give it plus 2000 power until end of turn. Next up, we've got Radiash, who's also on curve, 3 drop 7k with the ability to blow up the board except for Earth, and you're playing mostly Earth, so it'll be just fine. Turning all of your 10 possible summons into her special is also very useful, so having only one copy of her does not stop you from using her special. Next up, we've got Luma on curve, 4 drop 8k, and if anybody's going to try to target him or deal him damage, he's definitely going to be able to hit them back at least. So if we're talking about Alcid combo, not as effective against Luma. Next up, we've got Guy. So with the meta being mostly guessed at starting off with Mono Earth and Mono Ice, so every meta, usually every time a new expansion comes out, a new set comes out, people like to revert back to monocolor strategies. They're much more stable, and you get to actually kind of test things out that way. And I mean, you're not going to have to worry about having the wrong color card when you're trying to play something else. And with the power level of the cards that were revealed for the set, Ice was guessed to be one of the strong contenders, but Earth was also a strong one. And when you think you're going to play against Ice and you're playing as Earth, you definitely think of that guy. He's very effective at being on curve, 4 drop 8k, Brave, and he cannot be doled by your opponent's summons or abilities. So that's actually normally Ice forwards are not on the larger end. They're more on the smaller end, but very effective at doling or freezing forwards. And a frozen Brave guy is not going to care. He's going to be able to attack and defend turn after turn. Next up, we've got Raban. He's been a staple since Opus 4, and he's a form of removal. But keep in mind that if you have both Ingus and Enna Kros, he's going to stay alive. And if you want to play other fancy tricks, you've also got Cockatrice, Golem, Hecate, and Titan to keep him alive. And if you want to go blow up two of your opposing forwards, you could have him deal 9k to one, Hecate here, and deal 8k to the other. And if he's able to survive, he's still on curve, 4 drop 8k. Next up, the only non-Earth card in this deck, but the cool thing about it is that he's both named Warrior of Light and Job Warrior of Light, and he's on curve, 4 drop 8k, and he reduces the damage dealt to all Job Warrior of Light you control by 2000. So that's going to include Ingus and Wall. And he's also got the special ability of Bitter End for discarding a copy of himself, 1 colorless, and doling. To choose one forward, deal a damage equal to the to Warrior of Light's power. So if you've got Ingus out, that's actually 9,000 damage that you're able to deal. Next up, we've got Wall, who's actually an acronym for Warrior of Light, but being that he's actually not specifically named Warrior of Light, you can have both him and Opus 2 Warrior of Light at the same time. He's on curve, 4 drop 8k, but and his job is Warrior of Light, and his abilities are just amazing. I mean, you've got so many of them. He's so flexible. Whether you get him mid-game or late game, he's just insane. The fact that he doesn't even need to have Brave to be effective as more than just a blocker. He's like a half a half one-time, let's say, Gapal. Well, I guess it's not really Gapal. Gapal would be across the board. So a plus 2,000 power boost, though, is definitely nice. So one of his abilities... Okay, so his overall ability is that at the beginning of your attack phase, choose up to 2 of the following abilities. Okay, choose a forward, he gains Brave until the end of the turn. Choose a forward, he gains plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. Choose one dual forward, deal it 3,000 damage, and all forwards cannot be chosen by summons EX burst or character EX burst this turn. So if you get him, let's say mid-game, you could give a forward Brave and plus 2,000 power so that you could have him ready to block. And if you're trying to close out the game and you're worried about those EX bursts, you could just choose that last ability. So keep in mind that on all modular spells or abilities, whenever you choose more than one mode, in this case 2 of them, it will actually go through and resolve the top one first, then the second one. Okay, so it's not as relevant here, but things like some of the other summons might actually do that in the other set. So I just want to go over that ruling for you. Next up, we've got Sessile. He's on curve, 5-drop 9k, and he's EX burst, and he's actually very good as anti-aggro. So when Sessile enters the field, choose one dull forward opponent controls. If its cost is equal to or less than the damage you received, break it. And his special is discard a copy of himself, choose one forward. Sessile deals you 1 point of damage. If the cost of the forward is equal to or less than the damage you have received, break it. So if he comes up early and you've taken a couple points of damage, he might be enough to take out one forward. And mid-late game, you might actually be able to break an opposing forward that's actually giving you a lot of trouble. Next up, we've got Yang, 5-drop 9k. So Yang is similar to Guy, as in he cannot be dulled by your opponent's summons or abilities. But on top of that, if you control 5 or more Earth characters, Yang gains plus 1,000 power and Brave. So he becomes more like Guy that way, but much bigger. On top of the fact that you're playing a mono-color deck, so 5 Earth characters isn't very difficult. We're talking about maybe like 3 to 4 backups and 2 forwards. Keep in mind that includes himself when he's counting up to 5. And if you have Ingus and Enna Kros on the field, he's actually a 10k Brave forward if you have 5 Earth characters. Next up, we've got Shantou, 6-drop 9k, so not exactly on curve, but not too far off. And 9k is usually relevant enough to deal with most things. But her ability to be able to block really big guys and wipe a board and remove it from the game is actually pretty good against aggro, or not even just aggro, but even just big guys or anything like that. So when Shantou is dealt damage, deal the same amount of damage to all forwards other than Shantou. If a forward damaged by this ability is put into the break zone this turn, remove it from the game instead. So if somebody were to say buff their forward into something that's bigger than Shantou and was able to break Shantou, Shantou would still trigger and deal that damage back to everything. And also the fact that you're playing copies of the backup Shantou as well to use with her special, you'd be able to deal. Well, let me go over that special real quick. Colossal Shantou. So discard a copy of herself, 3 Earth CP, and dull her. Deal 5,000 damage to all the forwards. So that would mean dealing 5,000 damage to every forward, including Shantou herself. Then triggering her ability, dealing another 5,000 damage to all forwards except for Shantou. So 2 instances of 5,000 damage to all forwards, which could be up to a total of 10k if they don't have something like Minwoo to break the damage apart. And that's usually enough to wipe a board. Okay, next up we're gonna go over the summons. So Cockatrice, 1-drop EX summon. Choose one forward during this turn. It cannot attack or block and doesn't receive any damage. So that's very effective if your opponent is trying to do some kind of like Alcid combo or anything like that, or buff one of their forwards past your guy. But also you could use it like Earth version of Red Mage for one turn as a summon. I mean, forcing one of their opponents not an opposing forward to not be able to block could actually become quite relevant. And sometimes being able to, if you already called a block, that still counts if you put Cockatrice on the stack afterwards and keep your forward from taking any damage after that. Next up, we've got Golem. 1-drop EX burst summon. Choose a forward. It gains plus 2,000 power until the end of the turn. If it's blocking, gains plus 4,000 power until the end of the turn instead. So it's another summon you can use with Rydia, and also you're able to buff your attacking forward by 2,000. Or if you want to block, 4,000 power is usually enough to just blow out anything. Hecate here, 2-drop summon. It's been a staple since Opus 4 came out. Choose one forward you control and one forward opponent controls. Each forward deals damage equal to its power to the others. So sometimes you have a problem with some of the more evasive forwards, or you want to take out, let's say, a Renoa during your opponent's second main phase after they attacked. Hecate here will do the trick. Also works with Rydia, and there's a lot of synergy with, let's say, Danluma, Warrior of Light, and a Shantou to just be able to do some fancy tricks. I mean, if you do it with Danluma, Hecate your Danluma against their forward, you're able to deal 12. Initially, the power level of Danluma, which could be anywhere between, let's say, 8 to 10, depending on whether or not you have Ingus and Enna Kros, and let's not even count Golem and other Ingus boosts. But after that, Danluma would deal another 4,000 power or 4,000 damage to something to opposing forward. With Warrior of Light would actually take 2,000 damage less, and with Shantou, she would actually trigger and do even more damage to everybody else after the fact. Next up, we've got Titan to keep you guys alive. Staple since Opus 1, and I don't foresee Titan being taken out of many Earth decks in the near future. I mean, being able to keep your force from being broken. So if somebody's thinking like they're gonna do a trade with you, then you just play Titan and say like, well, your guy's broken and mine's not. Mine's just dull now. So that's pretty effective. Okay, let's go over some of the backups. We've got Doga. 2-drop is relevant because, hey, first turn 2-drop is usually pretty good. Being able to put Doga into the break zone and paying 1 Earth CP and doling him to choose one character you control. It cannot be broken by your opposing summons or abilities that don't deal damage. Can be pretty good. I mean, if somebody's trying to do something like Odin or Sessile or anything like that, then you're able to keep your guy alive. Also Exodus. Alright, Mach Mobius for 2 CP. If you pay 2 Earth CP and you dull him and put him in the break zone, you can search for a forward and put it in your hand. So that's any forward. So it helps if you're trying to close out the game or save yourself. So let's say that you want to use a special, go ahead and you could use a Mach Mobius and fetch out and search out that other copy of a forward, like let's say Warrior of Light or Shantou, wipe a board that way. Or if you were to just want to get a Raban and just deal 9,000 damage to an opposing forward, that's might just be enough. Next up, we've got Monk. 2-drop 2 CP Earth, 2-drop, whatever you want to say it is. It's been relevant since Opus 2. Great card. It's a staple. If I play Earth, I usually put 2 to 3 copies of it in my deck, mostly 3, because the ability to break itself by paying 2 Earth CP and doling it and putting it in the break zone. You can choose one forward, give it plus 3,000 power, and brave until end of turn. So sometimes you just need that combat trait to go over the top, or sometimes you just need to clear some backup space, and that's definitely a good way to do it. Next up, we've got Enna Kros, 3 Earth CP, one of those buff backups. So it gives all Earth forwards you control plus 1,000 power. In this case, you're playing Mono Earth plus 2 Warrior of Lights. Yeah, she's gonna do her job, and she's really great. Every monocolor deck, or even mostly dual color deck, should consider running it. I mean, monocolor decks have almost no reason why they shouldn't run a backup that gives plus 1000 power. So there you go. Next up, we've got Graviton, 3 Earth CP. When you cast an Earth Summon, choose one forward you control, it gains plus 2000 power until the end of the turn. With 10 summons, that can put in a lot of work. Next up, we've got Miner. We've got 2 copies of it. And at 4 CP, when a Miner enters the field, choose one backup in your break zone, add it to your hand. So technically, he's like a 2 CP backup. And 1 Earth CP, 1 colorless, and dole him. Put Miner into the break zone. Choose one forward in your break zone and add it to your hand. So if you have 1 Miner in play and 1 Miner in the break zone, you can actually keep doing the Miner recursion in order to get to get forwards back to your hand. So that becomes really relevant for specials or mid-late game when your opponent was actually able to deal with certain forwards that are problematic to their deck and their strategies. Using Miner to get a forward back to your hand is really relevant. I mean, usually when somebody has an issue taking out one of your forwards that gives them a lot of trouble, let's say Dataluma against a lightning deck, being able to bring him back usually is a big deal because they usually have to spend a decent amount of resources in order to take it out in the first place. So doing it again might actually be able to put you so far ahead in the resource race that it could win you the game. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Star Sybil. Great card, one of my favorite cards in the set. 5 Earth CP, backup, EX burst. So when Star Sybil enters the field, you may search for one category 11 character other than card name Star Sybil and put into your hand. So keep in mind, it says character, and that means that you can get either copies of forward or backup Shantou. And if you already have a forward Shantou on the field, that means you can search out to play her special and wipe the board except for Shantou herself. So that's really good. And you think that'd be enough, but she's actually got another ability on top of that. Dole and put Star Sybil into the break zone. Play 1 forward of cost 6 or less from your hand onto the field. You can only use this ability during your turn. So that does not have an element restriction, meaning that you could also play that Light Wire of Light by doling and breaking her, but for the most part, you'd be able to play any of the forwards you have in your deck. I mean, Shantou's 6, but everything else is 3 to 5 CP. So go ahead and use her. She's just so useful. I mean, being able to search out a card in your deck means that she's technically 3 CP. On top of the fact that you're going to get a bunch of CP back by just doling her to play a forward without paying a cost from your hand onto the field. Next up, we've got Shantou. So if you ever have problems with a board being an opponent being too aggressive and needing to wipe the board, Shantou is definitely there to help you out. So if you get hit early and flip Star Sybil off of EX Burst, then you can search out Shantou and play her next turn and just wipe the board. So that's definitely a strategy I'd want to think about and consider if I played an Earth deck, playing a combination of Star Sybil and Shantou backup. And last but not least, we've got Tama. 7 drop, that's expensive, but you get a lot of CP value out of it. Okay, so when Tama enters the field, choose 1 Earth forward of cost 5 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. So when you play Tama, so the normal course of action when you play cards, when you play this game, is that you play the card and you pay the cost, and then any enter the field ability will go on the stack when it finally enters the field. Meaning that if you play 7 cost Tama and you discard, let's say, a Shantou to do that, then when Tama enters the field, you can now, or let's say maybe not Shantou 6. So let's go with Sessile. You play Tama, discarding a Sessile to pay for the cost. Tama enters the field, you can now play your Sessile onto the field. That's great. And after the fact, if you wanted to do a little bit more, Tama still has an ability to break itself 6 colorless CP and dole itself and put itself in the break zone. Choose 1 Earth forward of cost 5 or less in your break zone, play onto the field dole. You may only use this ability during your turn. So if your board didn't have either Raban or Sessile in play, and you needed to have some removal, go ahead. You probably will be able to pull that off. And if you need to have just that little bit of a boost from, let's say, either Ingus or Wall, then you can use Tama during your turn, during your prep attack phase, or even after you declare attackers to bring a copy of it if you don't have it already in play. So that's it for the deck. I mean, it's a great deck. It's very solid. We're talking about mono elements. That's one of the best ways to get around the whole color fixing. You don't have to worry about it at all when you go this way. The only issue you might ever run into in this deck will probably be having 2 Warriors of Light from Opus 2 in your beginning hand, but other than that, you should be just fine. And it's a strong deck, very reliable, a lot of buffers, your forwards get really big. So if you're not sure when you're going to play in Opus 5, I would definitely give this a shot. And if you don't, I would definitely test against it, because it's going to be one of the powerful decks, at least at the beginning of the meta, until somebody comes out with something stronger. And going over the top 8 list, it looks like Ice did not cut it to take this guy out. So congratulations again to Korey Fay, and thanks to all the viewers for sticking around for this whole video. And as a reminder, sub for these sleeves, you can win them. Alright, catch you next time, guys, and thanks again from the Break Zone.